At my brother's engagement party, I opened a gift from my parents. Inside was a court summons. They were suing me. In front of 60 guests. No one said a word. So I walked out and never looked back. My name's Leo, I'm 28, and my family has never truly seen me. Oh, they knew I existed, they just treated me like I was optional. Forgettable. Replaceable. Meanwhile, my older brother Marcus was the sun around which our entire family orbited. Growing up in suburban Virginia, I learned early that in our home, silence could be violent. There were no slammed doors, no shouted fights. But cold smiles, passive digs, and selective ignorance? That was our love language. And Marcus? Marcus could do no wrong. He was charismatic, loud in a likable way, always saying the right thing, always knowing how to win people over. If Marcus skipped homework, he was creative. If I got a 4.0 GPA, it was, well, that's expected from Leo. At dinner, Marcus got the biggest slice of roast. At Christmas, he got the newest tech. I got socks. Still, I told myself it didn't matter. I kept my head down, studied, worked hard. I got into a solid university, landed an IT job straight out of school, bought a modest condo by 24. My parents, Angela and Robert, never once visited. Never asked how the move went. But they sure bragged to family friends about how our Leo's in tech. Over the years, the distance grew. I'd visit on holidays, always bringing gifts or offering to fix their phones or set up their Wi-Fi. But nothing changed. Marcus would stroll in an hour late, drop his keys on the table, and my mom would beam like he'd just cured cancer. By 27, I had stopped trying. I stopped initiating. But then came the call, my mom phoning me to say they were throwing a surprise engagement party for Marcus and Leona, his longtime girlfriend. Can you help set up? She asked. I hadn't even known he'd proposed. I said yes anyway. Because despite everything, I still showed up. The party was extravagant. Twinkling string lights, gold-trimmed table settings, an actual catering truck. I spent hours helping them set up, lifting drink coolers, hanging banners, moving chairs. My dad gave me a short nod once. That was it. When guests began to arrive, they walked past me like I was part of the staff. One woman even handed me her coat. I didn't correct her. Marcus and Leona arrived to cheers and applause. My mom cried. My dad raised a glass. Marcus grinned like the prince of the evening. I stood in the back, watching. And then came the speech. My mom stood up, tapped her glass. Before dessert, she said, we want to recognize our other son, Leo, for making big decisions about his future. People turned. I froze. She walked over to me holding a thick white envelope. We're so proud of you, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. We want to support you in your next chapter. I opened it. Inside was a stack of documents. Legal forms. The heading read, Notice of Civil Claim, Angela and Robert Hart versus Leo Hart. They were suing me. I flipped through the pages. They had itemized the cost of raising me, food, rent, schooling, even clothes. There was a line that read emotional labor compensation. I felt the floor drop under me. I looked up. My mom was smiling. It's just formal, she said sweetly. You've always said you want to be independent. This is just making it even. People around us had gone silent. Some were whispering. One woman laughed, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. My parents were actually, legally, suing me as a gift. So I did the only thing I could. I placed the papers back in the envelope. I nodded once. Then I turned and walked out. Not a word. Not a goodbye. Not a single person followed me. And that was the moment my life changed. The drive home was quiet. No music. No tears. Just the steady hum of my tires against the asphalt and the envelope on the passenger seat, still unopened after I'd tucked the papers back inside. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just sat on my couch, staring at the wall, replaying everything, my mother's smug smile, my dad's blank stare, the whispering guests, the way Marcus had frozen mid-toast like he'd finally realized things had gone off-script. No one called that night. Not the next day either. A week passed. Then, out of nowhere, I got a voicemail from my dad. Leo, please. We didn't mean it like that. Your mother thought, we didn't think you'd take it seriously. His voice was hollow, shaky. Like he knew they'd gone too far. I didn't call back. Instead, I called a lawyer. I explained everything. The emotional neglect, the public ambush, the absurdity of the lawsuit. My lawyer, a sharp, unflinching woman named Nadine, listened quietly. When I finished, she said they wanted control. Let's take it back. We filed a countersuit. Emotional distress. Manipulative coercion. Abuse of legal processes for humiliation. Nadine said the public nature of the original filing actually worked in our favor. It was clear this wasn't just about money. It was about power. The moment we filed, I made it public. The court records were easy enough to find. I didn't blast it on social media, but I knew word would get around. And oh, it did. My cousin sent a confused text. My uncle left a voicemail starting with, "What the hell is going on?" Suddenly, my parents were the ones on the defensive. I stopped responding. I didn't need to argue. The silence was finally loud enough. 2 weeks later, another call came. This time I answered. "Leo?" My mother's voice was thin, almost unrecognizable. We saw what you filed." "Good. We didn't want it to go this far. Can we talk?" I stood by the window watching the rain roll down the glass. "Now you want to talk?" After blindsiding me in front of 60 people. "We made a mistake." "No, you made a decision," I said. "Now you live with it." "Leo, we're your family." "No. You're plaintiffs. And I'm your target." She started crying. I ended the call. That night, I wrote something in my journal I hadn't ever let myself say aloud. They broke the rules first. Now I'm writing my own. And I meant it. In the weeks that followed, I expected anger. Threats. Maybe even a countersuit to my countersuit. But what I got was nothing. Just silence. Not from the world, oh no, the whispers had turned to murmurs. The engagement party guests were talking. Word had spread through family circles, coworkers, even a few of my old high school classmates. But from my parents? Radio silence. Until I got a letter from their lawyer. Not an email. A thick, formal envelope hand-delivered to my condo mailbox. They wanted to settle. The letter was carefully worded, an invitation to mediate to resolve this unfortunate misunderstanding outside of court. They wanted it quiet now. Of course they did. Their image was cracking. I forwarded the letter to Nadine, who called me 10 minutes later. "They're scared," she said. "And for once, that's a good thing. We'll meet them on your terms." The day of the meeting, I wore the same suit I'd worn to Marcus's engagement party. Not out of sentiment, but as a reminder of who I'd been that night. The version of me they thought would stay quiet. The conference room was cold and neutral. I arrived early. Nadine sat beside me with a folder of evidence. When my parents walked in, my breath caught for a second, not from nerves. From recognition. They looked older. Smaller. Their movements weren't as confident. My mother's eyes darted around the room. My father's jaw was tight, but his hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his cufflink. They didn't look like villains. They looked like people whose power had been stripped away. My mom opened her mouth to speak. "I'm not here for apologies," I cut in. "Not unless they're public." She blinked. My dad flinched. "I want a written statement," I continued. "An honest one. Not vague. I want you to acknowledge exactly what you did. Not just the lawsuit, everything. The manipulation. The years of favoritism. The emotional neglect. All of it. We didn't come here to be humiliated," my dad snapped. I turned to him slowly. "You already did that to me. In front of 60 people. Remember?" He said nothing. "You want this to end? You want to salvage what little is left of your reputation? Then you tell the truth. In writing. And you send it to every person who was at that party. Every relative. Every friend. Everyone who saw what you did." They looked at each other. My mother looked pale. "We'll consider that." "No," Nadine said sharply. "You don't consider it. You comply. Or we go to court. And believe me, your secrets won't stay buried there either." Silence. After a long pause, my dad exhaled and nodded. My mother followed, eyes glossy. We finalized the terms in that room. The statement would go out within 10 days. A formal, specific apology. They would admit to emotional harm, acknowledge the lawsuit was baseless, and confirm the pattern of mistreatment. No spin. No vague language. If they broke that deal, the court case would proceed, and this time it wouldn't just be about civil damages. When they left, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt, still, like a pond after the wind stops. Not joy. Not revenge. Just peace. But it wasn't over yet. Not until the world saw the truth they'd hidden behind smiles and spotless family photos for decades. And not until I took back every piece of myself they'd ever stolen. 10 days later, the statement went live. It was emailed to every guest from the engagement party. Posted in the family Facebook group my mom once used to document every one of Marcus's achievements. Sent as a group text to relatives near and far. It wasn't dramatic. It was honest. Chillingly honest. They wrote about how they had weaponized affection. How they emotionally neglected me while parading Marcus as the shining star. How they sued me, their son, as a way to punish independence. And most importantly, how they finally realized they couldn't hide from that truth anymore. The fallout was immediate. Some relatives reached out quietly. "We always wondered why you were so distant." Others stayed silent but left the group chats. One of my aunts, who had never said a kind word to me growing up, actually sent me a handwritten letter. "I'm sorry I never saw it. I'm sorry I didn't ask." Even Marcus texted. Just 2 lines. "You've changed. You're not the same Leo who used to beg for attention." I don't like it. I stared at that message for a long time. He was right. I had changed. I didn't respond. The months that followed were quiet. My parents didn't call. They didn't visit. They didn't try to spin it. Maybe they realized there was nothing left to say that could undo what they'd done, or maybe they just didn't know who I was anymore without my silence. But I knew. I poured myself into work, into new friendships, into building a life I didn't have to justify or perform for anyone. I went to therapy, started hiking again, even took a solo trip to Iceland, something I never would have allowed myself to do before. And one morning, sitting alone at a black sand beach with coffee in hand, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. Not because they deserved forgiveness, they didn't. But because I finally understood that closure doesn't come from someone else's apology. It comes from reclaiming your voice. It comes from no longer waiting for validation. No longer shrinking to fit the role someone else wrote for you. The past was still there. The damage was still real. But it didn't own me. They tried to sue me into silence. Instead, I told the world what they did. And then I let them go. Not with vengeance. Not with bitterness. But with clarity. They don't get to define me anymore. I do. And that's the story of how I lost a family and found myself.